Okay.
Thought there was a beauty and a depth, and I felt it was profound.
Oh, that was the best ever. Thank you so much, guys. Beautiful, beautiful cut.
Steven Spielberg is 79 years old now. He's the highest-grossing director in history with over $10 billion in worldwide box office, and he decided to make another Alien movie. On paper, this thing was bulletproof. Original story about government UFO cover-ups, scripted by David Koepp, who's worked with Spielberg for decades. Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor starring. $115 million budget, another $80 million in marketing. Universal released it June 12th as their big summer tentpole. Everything lined up perfectly. Opening weekend, they pulled $93 million worldwide. Solid number. Spent 1 week at number 1, and then Toy Story 5 showed up with a $160 million opening and just obliterated everything in its path. Disclosure Day dropped 62% in its second weekend, and that was the end of it. But the opening weekend numbers don't tell you what actually went wrong. The demographics do. Somebody pulled the audience data and it was a joke. 60% of the people who bought tickets were over 35. Attendance from anyone under 17 was, quote, virtually non-existent. Spielberg made a movie for people who grew up watching E.T. and Close Encounters. That generation showed up. Their kids didn't. And even the people who did show up weren't all that happy about it. The ending is basically recycled X-Files plots and Close Encounters beats. It's not a bad movie, it's just okay, and okay doesn't cut it when you need $300 million to break even. Right now, it's sitting at $216 million worldwide, and it's not going to get much higher. Between 2003 and 2014, Angelina Jolie was one of the safest bets in Hollywood. Put her face on a poster and you were basically printing money. Her films made almost $7 billion over her career. This one opened to $587 per screen. It's a French drama where Angelina plays an American filmmaker who goes to Paris Fashion Week and gets a cancer diagnosis. It premiered at Toronto in September 2025, got mixed reviews, and then bounced around European festivals. They actually had a French theatrical release back in February. Then Vertical picked up North American distribution and released it on June 26th. And when I say released, I mean dumped. Zero promotion, limited theaters, good luck. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 46%. This was always going to be a European art house film for a very specific crowd, and that crowd apparently decided to stay home. Jolie's been moving toward these smaller European projects for years, and maybe that's what she wants. But it's also completely removed her from the world where her name actually meant something at the box office. She doesn't open movies anymore. She makes movies that play festivals, get acquired for nothing, and disappear. After Superman made $600 million, DC Studios needed to prove something. They needed to show that this new universe could actually function without James Gunn personally directing every project. Supergirl was supposed to be this solid second chapter. They put up $170 million for production, another $100 million for marketing, Craig Gillespie directing, Millie Alcock from House of the Dragon making her film debut. Initial projections were for a $60 to $70 million domestic opening. I still don't understand where that confidence came from. The screenwriter had never written a feature before. The lead actress had never been in a film before. The villain was someone nobody outside of hardcore comics readers had ever heard of. And the source material was one of the weakest Supergirl runs ever published. How do you look at all of that and think $60 million opening? So instead of 60, all they got was 37, basically dead on arrival. Peter Safran, co-head of DC Studios, came out and admitted they weren't meeting expectations after one weekend. One weekend, and they were already in damage control mode. Second weekend, it dropped 77%, made just over $8 million. That kind of drop puts you in the same category as Morbius and Joker 2 and The Marvels, the biggest superhero disasters in history. Right now, it's sitting around $100 million worldwide. Break-even is $300, minimum. Even Deadline is projecting $125 million in losses, and Deadline usually plays nice with the studios. And then, when the movie bombed, they tried to blame the fans, called them sexist. Owen Gleiberman, veteran film critic, wrote a negative review for Variety and got accused of sexism too. He got attacked so badly that Variety had to come out and publicly defend him. Nobody wanted to make this movie. For 17 years, He-Man bounced around Hollywood like a cursed object. Sony had it, then didn't. Netflix picked it up, then dropped it. Every few years, you'd hear that someone was finally making a He-Man movie, and then you'd never hear about it again. Amazon MGM Studios was the last one standing. They hired Travis Knight, who'd made Bumblebee. They cast Nicholas Galitzine as Prince Adam and paid Jared Leto to sit in a makeup chair for hours to play Skeletor. The budget ballooned to $170 million. Then they spent even more on marketing. Opening weekend, Masters of the Universe made $54 million worldwide, which sounds okay until you look at what else came out that weekend. The Scary Movie reboot, an R-rated horror comedy that cost $30 million, opened to $55. It beat He-Man. And of course, there was Obsession that had cost just $750,000 to make. It was in its fourth weekend and it was still making $25 million. Second weekend, Masters dropped 71%, fell from second place to fifth. By week 3, newer releases had already buried it. The final worldwide total was $112 million, and to break even, the film needed somewhere around $350 million. What went wrong is pretty simple. This kind of movie doesn't work anymore. Big CGI fantasy based on old IP trying to launch a new franchise, no built-in movie audience. That playbook worked 10 years ago. It doesn't work now. Even the MCU can barely crack $400 million internationally these days. Spending $170 million on He-Man in 2026 was like showing up to a gunfight with a sword. There's a version of this movie that makes money. You take a modest budget, make a solid action, put a star in it who can actually sell tickets, and you turn a profit. Jason Statham's been doing exactly this for years. It's not complicated. Lucky Strike had the modest budget part down. $10 million for a survival thriller about a soldier trapped behind enemy lines during the Battle of the Bulge. The director had made The Outpost, which was well received. On paper, the math works. The problem was the star. Scott Eastwood cannot sell a movie. This has been proven repeatedly. Put him in a lead role, open it wide, and audiences do not show up. Colin Hanks was in there too, and look, no disrespect to either of them, but two sons of famous actors does not equal one actual movie star. The reviews didn't help. 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, 46% on Metacritic. Critics called it boring and bland. One reviewer asked who the film was even for, and nobody had a good answer. The worldwide gross right now is $1.3 million on a $10 million budget. They'd recoup just 13% of production costs before you even count marketing. When the first Jackass movie came out in 2002, it opened to $22.7 million. Johnny Knoxville and the guys were young, the stunts were insane, and nobody had seen anything like it. The whole thing felt dangerous. 24 years later, Paramount released what they said was the final Jackass movie. Opening weekend was just $10.3 million worldwide, less than half of what the original made in 2002, the lowest debut in franchise history. Part of the problem was the movie itself. They called it Best and Last because that's what it was, a greatest hits compilation with some new footage mixed in. But the whole point of Jackass was always wondering what crazy thing they'd do next. A retrospective kills that. Anyone who wanted to relive the classic moments could already watch them on YouTube for free. But the bigger problem was time. The guys who made Jackass are in their 50s now. The audience that grew up watching them is in their 40s. And younger viewers, the ones who might have carried the torch, already have their own version of Jackass. They're watching dudes on TikTok and YouTube do stunts every day for free without paying $15 for a movie ticket. Jackass Forever opened to $23 million 4 years ago. That was already a decline. This one couldn't even get halfway there. Robin Hood is cursed. This keeps happening and nobody learns. Russell Crowe did a big serious Robin Hood in 2010 and it underperformed. Taron Egerton did an action reboot Robin Hood in 2018 and it was the biggest bomb of that year. Every few years, someone in Hollywood decides they're going to be the one who finally cracks Robin Hood, and every time, audiences stay home. So naturally, someone made another one. Michael Sarnowski, who directed A Quiet Place Day 1, wrote and directed a dark, violent version based on an old ballad about Robin Hood's death. Hugh Jackman plays an aging outlaw living in guilt-ridden exile. The budget was $20 million. A24 paid another $4 million for U.S. distribution rights. They released it on June 19th. The same weekend, Toy Story 5 opened to $160 million. The Death of Robin Hood made $2.9. International added another $45 grand. The per-screen average on opening Friday was $631. For Hugh Jackman, this was his worst wide-release opening since the pandemic. Before that, you'd have to go back almost 20 years to find a Jackman movie that opened this low. A24 seemed to know it was in trouble. The marketing campaign was basically non-existent compared to their other releases. They held the premiere during the NBA Finals when nobody was paying attention. Releasing an R-rated violent period piece against Toy Story 5 was either monumentally stupid counter-programming or a studio that had already decided to cut its losses and move on. The break-even point was somewhere around $45 million. The film made $6.